Hi everyone. So my project is on the second chapter of Congress Revisited, titled The House in a Time of Crisis. The book provides helpful context for how we get to the start of that crisis, which is in 1994 when Republicans took back control of the House for the first time in 4 decades. Sort of context goes back to the 1970s when Democrats became more homogeneous and more liberal. That meant party unity and party leadership. However, it also meant Democrats were losing in the South. Now, while Democrats held control, that also meant that they were being held accountable. They at least had Republican presidents to blame while a Republican president was in office. That changed when Bill Clinton was elected, however. More important than Bill Clinton is Newt Gingrich. He and other conservatives, even before Bill Clinton was elected, decided that they were going to attack the Democratic control through the Conservative Opportunity Society in the 98th Congress of 1983 to 1985. Gingrich was also elected minority whip in place of a more moderate candidate. So another attack on Democrats came with the common national agenda of Contract with America, which was successful during the first 100 days of the 104th Congress. Gingrich also had a lot of power with his committee membership selections and pushing for Republican unity on legislation. The amount of power he had was reminiscent of the SAR leadership days of 1889 and 1910. Despite all this power that Gingrich had, it backfired. He overstepped when in 1995 he challenged Clinton to the point of there being government shutdowns which were blamed on Gingrich and the Republicans, and even worse, Republicans blamed Gingrich. In 1996, Gingrich and Republicans were forced to moderate their stances. While Republicans would hold their majority, it was lessened, which didn't bear well. Gingrich would step down on his own in 1998 and even resign from the House altogether after he strove to impeach Clinton, but the 1998 elections only resulted in the president's party gaining seats in a midterm election for the first time since 1934. Next came Speaker Dennis Hastert, who made sure party leadership still had tight control in committee selection. He wanted to avoid doing a do-nothing Congress, so he tried to work together with Clinton and the Democrats to have legislative accomplishments. It was not meant to be, as Congress was dubbed the Do-Little Congress, and by 2006 did become the Do-Nothing Congress. What successes there were mostly chalked up to the aftermath of 9/11. It was mostly overshadowed by economic crises and once again that dwindling majority. Even worse, Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi proved to be an effective fundraiser. So all these issues for Republicans worked heavily in favor for Democrats. The editors note that this all contributed to Democrats winning more seats in 2006 than Republicans had in the past 6 elections. Like Gingrich, Hastert resigned rather than have to be minority leader. What makes the 1994 election so noteworthy is how much has changed. So there's an issue of what is termed the seemingly unrestrained partisanship, which is affected by party loyalty and a declining incumbency advantage. Which makes for that declining advantage is how there's a common theme to run and get elected, and so incumbency is less important. With seats safe due to partisanship, incumbents don't have to bother appealing to independents or worrying about a general election challenger. Rather, they might have to worry about a primary challenger. All this points to being a party loyalist rather than moderating stances, and moderates are actually the casualties. Party control of the House has been up for grabs ever since the 1994 election, which was not the case beforehand. Now, the reason that's the case is because from 1994 to 2006, the major party never won more than 233 seats in any House election. That means that at most, a 16-seat shift would have changed party control of the House. Now, notice how there's a pattern of Republicans facing a dwindling or at least not a comfortable majority. That was the case for 6 House sessions in a row, which meant they always feared becoming the minority. Each party has about 170 safe seats. As it expands its majority, it's taking on more vulnerable seats. The seats which remain in the minority are more secure then. Think about it, because if they couldn't be overtaken by the majority in those sweeping elections of 2006, they're considered safe. Seats that went back and forth in subsequent elections since 2006 just go back and forth with the partisan swing then. Jumping ahead to 2010, this especially affected the junior members who lost to incoming freshman Republicans. So let's go back to 2006 then. What made the 110th Congress interesting was that the modified bailout bill was supported by the Republican President George W. Bush, and Democrats, the party, were able to rally, but opposed by Republicans. The economic situation, as most of us can likely remember, remained chaotic, and that time was ripe to elect President Obama, as well as give him a democratically controlled Congress with even more seats gained. The Democrats may have been able to assert their authority, but they too were affected by the Great Recession in their own way. Now, how they were affected is that they really pushed for this activism, which was termed one of the most activist domestic programs in American history. During that time, Obamacare was signed into law on March 23, 2010. The activist session would come as a price to Democrats, however, because while they were focused on activism, the public became concerned about the length and severity of recession, and Republicans were able to argue that Democrats had overreached. So that leads to organized groups against such activism, including the rise of the Tea Party movement. While Republicans were expected to gain seats in the 2010 election, it was truly remarkable how much they were able to gain, which meant gaining up lost ground from across the two previous elections, as the editors note. Now, the Tea Party movement may not have been unified organizationally, but it still did establish a platform for creating a message, which brings us back to the Contract for America. So noted is how of 80 freshman Republicans elected, 67 of them were endorsed by the Tea Party, which also enabled them to separate themselves from the failed Bush era. Now, with the Tea Party backing and message, Republicans decided that they were going to ideologically challenge Barack Obama and a Democratic Senate with an agenda which would turn completely away from this government activism and which would involve a reduction in spending and taxes. There would be no caving to the president, which was reminiscent of Republicans telling then House Minority Leader John Boehner that they wouldn't follow the president, and if he did, they would go against him. So, but Boehner still tried, because following the 2010 elections, now Speaker Boehner tried to warn his colleagues that the mistakes of 1995 could come back to haunt them, but it was to no avail. So what follows in 2011 is this confusing mishmash of near and barely avoided government shutdowns to do with appropriations, spending deals, and the debt ceilings. There were compromises and failed compromises to do with budget resolutions. And Obama would hail these compromises, but they still led to what the editors termed brinkmanship. So one of the agreements involved a committee which was authorized to try to cut the deficit with spending cuts. Otherwise, there would be spending cuts across the board, and they would be major and just affect everybody, but that still didn't work. So 2011 was regarded as one of the least productive sessions of Congress. With the Tea Party and the GOP taking the blame, Republicans decided that they were going to go with another plan, which involved more compromise, trying to get stuff done. And even then, when they were able to pass this bundled bill to do with flood insurance and student loans, the timing of that still messed things up, because that came at the same time as the Supreme Court upheld Obamacare. So Republicans went back to deciding they were just going to try to upend and repeal Obamacare, and it just led to this mess. The editors close on a rather dark note then, fearing for the 112th Congress. They do point that it could be good news for members, because they recognize that Congress actually does play a role in legislating and governing, and Republicans were able to contrast themselves from Obama and the Democrats, which could be good news for the Democrats as well, as they learned what they had to do. So whatever your thoughts on the two parties, it's really not hard to see that these periods truly seem to be a house in time of crisis, although it is worth wondering what the editors would think of 2014 and beyond.